Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Code Vein. I played it on the PS4, it's also available on the Xbox One and PC. So let's start with the story. You play as whoever the hell you want to name your character and get to create them, which is pretty cool. You are awoken by another Revenant, which Revenant is the name of vampires in this world, who basically lays it out for you that you are very important and you are kind of like the chosen one of this world. The area you are stuck in is basically cordoned off by this red mist and people can't seem to really get through it, and within it are the Revenants, a few humans, and a lot of Lost, which is what happens to a Revenant when they basically don't feed on human blood, which can grow from some like magical trees as well as they can get from like humans. You join a group that is basically trying to research this and figure it all out, and they're basically the good guys. Won't go into any more because, you know, obviously spoilers and whatnot for the later stuff. So on to the audio. I gotta say, I actually was impressed with the audio in this game. I love the music in this game. I really thought that the music was very well done. I think the sound effects for the creatures and the combat are very well done as well. It's the voiceover work that this game really kind of, None of the voiceover stuff is like outright bad, but it's also not exactly good either. It just lacks the depth it needs to be quality voiceover work. That's the best way that I can phrase it. My only real complaint with the audio though is that the overall mix seems a bit quiet. I had to crank up my like actual speaker audio for this game for some reason, but otherwise, you know, wasn't bad. Now, as for the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, this is a third-person action RPG. It's definitely supposed to be like a Soulsborne style game. Very much one of those get good, skill-based. That's what it's meant to be, but obviously the way I'm saying that, you could probably kind of tell I have some qualms with that notion. So firstly, I gotta point out that this game kind of incorporates a bunch of ideas from other games similar to it, but it doesn't really focus on one of those. So I'll just say this right away, it's very hard not to draw comparisons with this game because it very clearly wears its inspiration on its sleeve. So if you were to look at like Dark Souls, it's the guarding game. You've got Bloodborne, the dodging game. You've got Sekiro, the parrying game. And Code Vein tries to combine all three of those. Guarding works okay, dodging works okay, and parrying is very difficult to time in my opinion. You have to do it a little bit before, but not too soon, but not too late. It's just a bit of a nightmare. It's doable, and I'm sure there are people out there who have mastered the timing flawlessly. I struggled with it. I performed it from time to time, but I found dodging to work the best out of the three mechanics. One of the reasons, though, that I pointed out that dodging is okay is not because dodging doesn't really function, but because the monsters have weird ways of hitting you that just don't actually work. The number of times I had a monster like stab in front of them and I'm over to the side of them, but they still managed to hit me, it was ridiculous. I shouldn't have been getting hit in those situations, and yet somehow I was. So even if you dodged excellently, you could still get hit from bullshit hitboxes that the enemy was doing. It just didn't work great. And I've got to say, the combat in this game feels like it was very much designed for a different style game, an easier third-person action game, not such a tactical third-person action game. Because let's face it, there are plenty of third-person action slashy kind of games out there, but then you also have your much more hardcore ones, and the combat in this game feels like it was designed for the easier style rather than the hardcore style, which at times makes the game feel very easy and at other times makes it feel much harder than it needs to. One thing that they did add that makes the game overall considerably easier is you can have an AI companion running around, and man, they are pretty generally hardcore. I basically won an entire boss fight because I just stayed back and my AI companion went in and destroyed the enemy. If you want to crank up the difficulty a bit, yeah, you can have your companion stay away when you're fighting. They stay at the home base or whatever. But given the fact that I felt like the combat was broken overall in its nature, I preferred to keep the AI companion with me because it just worked better that way. There wasn't a good consistency in the enemies, but what happens is sometimes the same enemy in 2 different encounters will respond completely differently, so it's hard to develop patterns. And that is very true with some of the bosses. It can be very hard to determine their patterns and kind of useless to try and determine their patterns. Overall, for me, I just didn't feel like the combat was very satisfying in this game, so that's kind of a big negative when it's such a huge part of the game. Next up, you have the controls, which they work okay. I don't think they're amazing controls. There are definitely times where they were not as responsive as I needed them to be. I would be hitting a button and it would decide, no, I hadn't hit that button, and so I wouldn't be able to do what I needed to. Like roll and dodge out of the way. I will say, however, that I like the way the controls are mapped. I really have never been in love with some of the other games in this genre using the R1 and R2 or the trigger and right bumper buttons so much. This game uses the face buttons for your attacks, and I think that works very well in this game. I actually really enjoyed the way the controls were mapped out in this game. I found that that made playing it actually easier. And then on to the graphics. I love the visual style of this game. I love that it's a very colorful game. I love the whole anime aesthetic of the game. And I really love the character creator of this game. I was really impressed with how in-depth that went. If you just want to choose one of the presets and go with that, there are a ton of those, but you can then choose one of the presets and then even modify that further. There are a ton of options. I was just really impressed by that and really liked that part of the game. Unfortunately, I felt like the animations in this game were shit, and you notice them constantly because they're so bad in every cutscene. But not just in the cutscenes, even when your character's just walking around, the animation for the movement doesn't look good. And I gave my character very long hair, and the animation on the hair is horrible. Just things like that really become distracting because you're like, this looks kind of terrible. So I have kind of this love-hate for the art style and graphics of this game. So to wrap this up, I have seen reviews for Code Vein that rate it from middling to excellent, and middling, yes, I would agree with. Excellent, I can't see where that comes from. I feel like the unique things it does don't necessarily fit into the game, and that it wears its inspiration a little too openly. But it unfortunately doesn't do anything horribly, but neither does it do anything so well that I'm distracted from what it's clearly inspired by. I'm sure there are tons of people out there that loved this game. I just didn't love this game. I was very indifferent to this game. I never hated it. I never loved it. I just couldn't fully get behind this game, which is too bad because going into it, I was actually really excited and I really wanted this to be something cool and special, but I just didn't feel like it had what it needed to stand out in the genre. So for me, it's a skip. Any game that makes me feel as indifferent as Code Vein makes me feel, then why am I still playing it, you know? Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me what your favorite game with like an anime style is? Gotta say, I have always really loved Disgaea. Although Final Fantasy VII had an anime aesthetic as well that I really enjoyed. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one.